Colleagues, we're back from a short recess. Vice Speaker, you have the floor.
Jim, I yield to you, sir. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I just need to say something. I'm the facilities manager, and I don't think that the schools turn into this in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. This has been decades. Decades of neglect, decades of deferred maintenance. So this is, I just don't understand. Now you guys want to try to put us into receivership. You guys got to understand something. There's a lot of things in place right now.
I didn't say that though, Jim.
I know. But just hearing the word receivership, right, is like, but if that's what you guys think is best for the people of Guam, then let's do it. But let me tell you our plan. Our plan right now is to refurbish all the 10 schools, and we already identified funding, and the scope of work is out. And then on top of that, we also have a scope of work, and we identified funding to do all the restrooms in all the schools. Bring them up to ADA compliancy, public health standard. That is in the works now. We got all the fencing, we got the mold mitigation in place. A lot of things are happening now. You guys just don't see the results. And I tell you why you don't see the results, because we had issues with our governor and our AG. I mean, it's just issues that came up, and what can we do, right? Issues are issues. But I'm telling you now, the leadership that you have in front of you at GDOE, I've worked in the government for 32 years, and this, to me, is one of the most solid teams that I've been on. Their main interest and their main concern are the kids. I don't think that any of these guys up there would want to disappoint the children, but if we have to go to this shutdown or to the closure, then I think let's do it. The only way we can continue to do what we're doing now, and we've already did 18 out of 19, I mean, we still only got 19 or 18 schools left. There's a process in place, people. The process works. We work with public health. We are not doing no shortcuts. We do what they tell us to do, and we pass the inspections. Maybe not as fast as you guys like, but it's better than what has been happening in the last 10, 15 years. We have a process in place. Let us do our process. Now, if we can't do the process, then let's shut down the schools that failed. Let's do it. That's the only two options we have. Now, are we going to caution on the side of on error of what we're doing now? We need to move forward. That's the end of the story. The process that we have now works. That's all I can say. The leadership of the superintendent is solid. I'm telling you guys right now, the old man knows what he's doing. He knows he has a vision. We're moving towards that vision. And if you guys can't see it, then you guys need more information on it, let us know. We'll provide all that information to you. But everything that we've done so far is transparent. Everything is on the drive. Everything. We have nothing to hide. Any more transparent, we'll be naked. We won't be wearing clothes. That's as transparent as we are now. And I'm not trying to make fun of anybody, but this is how it is at GDOE right now. We have a vision, and we're moving towards that vision. Now, please, if we can come to terms with this law, let's pass it. And let us continue to do what we do. And if you guys need us to shut down the schools, okay, let's shut it down. But we need to have a decision. Let's do what we need to do.
Thank you, Jimmy, for your statements. I truly appreciate that. And I'm seeing a perspective that finally everybody's on the same table. And I ask those questions because I want to make sure, I don't want to go back to where we were before, but how did we get to this point today? Are there legislations in place that we need to revisit? Is there additional recommendations to amend, spell out as recommended by the players, the stakeholders up here? That's why we're here. So yes, we have to look at it, and yes, we made attempts even as far as last week, and yes, we're revisiting this today. So with the expertise up there and what we need to do, where do we really need to visit? Do we need to look at past legislation, present legislation? What do we need to do? Do we need to spell out more delineations of what should be done and inserted and what's dangerous or not dangerous so that we can assist you guys? Then let us know. I know my time is up, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Sudos Masi, Vice Speaker. Senator Brown?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. You know, as I sit here and I listen to these discussions and presentations, as we sat here for 4 days last week to go over proposed legislation to extend another year to the schools, I really am asking myself as to what role at this point do we have here in the legislature to address what is really an administrative operation. I don't know at this point, even if the amendments that were proposed last week were put into Bill 317, that it will pass, because this is really an operational issue. And for those of us that have worked on the other side of the aisle, you know, you are the arms and legs and the minds that move things. And I think the challenge here is how do we address the education of our children and at the same time address whatever physical deficiencies exist in the classroom or exist in the school facility. We know, for example, Simon Sanchez, obviously because of the conditions that are so extensive as a result, not just of years of, you know, that have piled up there, but because of the typhoon, the mold, that entire school facility has been shut down. It would be good, Mr. Superintendent, if you can tell us of the remaining schools with what's in place, with what assessments have been done, areas that you mentioned that if for whatever reason it's safety or major areas of construction that need to be addressed, that you're going to cordon off these areas so that the children can still come to school and be safe. What is in place to address the remaining schools that so education can be facilitated? Because I don't really think at this point that this really is a and we can stay here for the next few weeks and debate legislation. I don't think that's going to resolve the reality of where you're at on your side of the aisle, because that's really what you guys do. And as yes, we recognize maybe problems have existed for a long time, but a lot of people ignored it. A lot of people picked up their paychecks and they kept on going. So here we are. But I want to ask you, in looking at the remaining schools that need to be addressed, yes, they need inspections, but I'm assuming your people have assessed them to what areas are functional, usable, that school can be put in place. You already have gone through the process of knowing what the expectation is going to be with regards to the inspections by public health. Public health has also gone time and time again, at least through half the school system this year, to facilitate doing these inspections. So what can we anticipate for the remaining schools? Because we know major repairs, and you've outlined that, and I appreciate DOE's finally come up with their chart of what those priorities are. But what do you anticipate for the remaining schools of what you believe can be within a short time put into functional operations so our children can be in a classroom with their teachers learning, while these more major repairs perhaps need to be done at the same time simultaneously?
Senator, the work plan that we have laid out before us, first of all, we've taken a very close look at all of the campuses that are remaining to be inspected. Several of those, at this point, the number is 10, that are going to be in the refurbishment contract. And we've already worked, the contractor is Cortec, that's a public announcement now. They started work at GW today, the beginning of their setup and mobilization. We've been through the whole process with them in terms of how they will manage a campus, providing security, cordoning off actually whole buildings while they work on them, and rerouting traffic with safety supervisors on site so that students and faculty are kept away from areas that are hazardous. And they'll work each campus in stages, and it's unique to each campus because it's depending on the design of that one. So for example, the GW campus, the first building they're going to work on is the cafeteria building, then building 1, and they've staged it all the way through to finishing up at the gym. But that's about a 10-month process, maybe a little bit longer, we'll find out. So that kind of organization is already in place for all of the schools that will be involved with the refurbishment. For those that are not, we are taking 2 steps. First of all, ahead of the sequence of inspections, Mr. Panklinen's got two different maintenance teams out, one in the northern section, one in the southern section of the island, that are ahead of the inspection team by at least 2 or 3 weeks. And they're doing the maintenance and repair and changes that we know about and have been identified in those reports that principals have provided, and also what they've seen on their own and what's been called in addition, because we have a maintenance reporting system that's digital. They can put a work order in at the school, and they get it in the maintenance office. So we're responding to normal recurring maintenance issues. There's a sink that leaks, so that's one of the things we are responding to, is because we looked at our water bill and they advised us that there are a number of campuses that were using excessive water. So we've got plumbers out just fixing that. So we're doing that preliminary work, and then when the inspection team arrives on site, there's a couple of technicians that go with them, and they make on-site corrections. In addition to that, we've had our team and the principals cordon off areas on campuses that are hazardous. Whether it's a wing that's not being used, and we have one school that's closed down one whole wing because they don't need it, and so the kids can't even go into that area. For example, Ocean View Middle School, we've got a 2-story building in the middle of the campus that has not been used for years. It's fenced off. Kids can't get in there. So we're doing that kind of thing on each campus. And then when we have folks that are working, we're using visible protection barrier, not just tape, so that you can't get in that space. We know that we're going to have, for example, in all of our elementary schools that have Head Start, very soon we're going to have the contractors coming in that are either installing playgrounds or playgrounds with sunshades. So that is the same kind of coordination work that will be happening. This is going to be going on for some time, at least until March of 26, because most of this is funded with ARP dollars. So that money can be drawn all the way up until that date. But those are the steps that are in place. As we get into, we should be able to finish inspecting the schools that are not in the refurbishment process. I would say by the end of October, be done with that. And yeah, October into November, according to the work plan we have laid out right now. I lost my train of thought on the rest of it. But in addition to that, we have already earmarked the schools that are outside the refurbishment, whether they've been inspected yet or not, to go in and begin renovating restrooms, because that's the big outstanding item across the system is the restrooms. So we're already in the procurement process of buying and receiving all of the materials we need to have our staff go in and do that work, the schools that are not in the refurbishment contract. So that's the third step in the process. But we can get everybody inspected and certified except those schools in the refurbishment, because you can't inspect those till the work is done, and that's going to be later on. The contract, as they're set up, it's a 14-month performance period. So those will be the last one, those 10 schools.
Of these remaining schools, what's your timeline? If you're able to operate the school and also concurrently do these repairs at the same time with the guidelines that you mentioned, how many of these remaining schools do you think can be operational, and how soon can they be put in place so that children can be put into the classroom? Because I don't think it'll be tenable for our parents and the public to say, oh, we're not going to open this class, this school for 2 or 3 months. I don't think most people are going to say that's okay. And we know the limitations that come with trying to do online learning. And there are limitations that come with that. And then that doesn't address, again, all the other concerns that have been brought up about the challenges of, there might not be adult supervision at home for a child to be able to be at home, least of all to be, on their computer and trying to learn a class, especially younger children. And parents that have to go to work and do the day-to-day responsibilities they need to keep their household going. So of those remaining schools, how many do you believe you can get operational, and how soon? assuming that public health is able to come in and do these inspections. And the setup that you're just talking about you cordon off these areas, we can still have school and yet still do, you know, the playground upgrades and do the repairs that need to be made of your remaining schools now that have yet to be inspected. And how soon?
I think it's a fair estimate to say before the end of August, we could be able to survey and observe and do the things like you're talking about, cordoning off areas that are not safe or hazardous, rerouting student traffic before the end of the month or sooner. We could be able to do that, barring the need to have the inspection. Now, if it's contingent upon completing the inspection, then we'll have to have the students on another site until that's done, till the inspection's finished. It depends on that decision.
And how soon do you believe because public health has relayed that certainly they need to have the requests from GDOE before they're able to come in and do their inspection of the remaining schools. How many and how soon are you going to be able to make that request to public health to come in and do these inspections?
We have the schedule worked out, and we can put in basically not a blanket request, but a specific request by school within the next day or so.
Okay, but how soon do you believe how many schools can you request public health to come in and inspect in the near term of the remaining schools that have yet to be inspected?
I would think, based on our experience and the staffing we have to do that follow-on maintenance that I told you about, that we could do 2 at a time. That's what we're just finishing up right now. We have had 2. That pretty much stretches our capacity because of the trades that are involved, and it's different on each campus. So it's what one campus needs, another one may not.
What is your time frame for these remaining schools that you can request to public health? Are we looking at a month, 2 months? I mean, I think that's going to be the most critical question, you know, parents out there are going to have with regards, and certainly students as well, and wanting to know how soon. If their campus is one of the ones listed here that has yet to be inspected, how soon will they be able to get back into the classroom? What is your time estimate?
The farthest out, 2.5 months.
Okay, and how soon for the
or
remainder?
Sooner, depending on which school it is.
And how many of those may be 2.5 months? I mean, I'm sure you have it broken down already, and how many we think we can do in the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, month? If the most extreme case is 2.5 months, I mean, how many schools are we talking about? 3, 5, 10?
It's not counting the schools that are going to be refurbished, 11. 11 schools that we can get done in that length of time.
In 2.5 months?
Yes.
So
or sooner.
Okay. And what's the extreme case? How many of these remaining schools do you believe you're not going to be able to address to that extent of 2.5 months? Because I'm sure everyone's anxious. I mean, moving the school down by 1 week is pretty, you know, how much is going to be accomplished in that time frame, other than maybe internal reorganization?
The ones that are the longest are the ones that are going to be refurbished.
So what you're looking at,
We
October
can
maybe, November?
We can make the campus safe and navigable for the kids, but to have it inspected, that won't be until that project's finished.
Well, but is that inspection affecting the ability of the entire school to operate if you can segment off those existing projects and concentrate on the areas that are workable and usable and safe in the school?
We would concentrate our forces, well, don't want to duplicate work on ones you're contracting out, but we would concentrate our staff on the schools that are not in the refurbishment to get them as solid as sooner rather than later, as solid as they can be. And then, because as the contracts are set up, within the next few weeks, they're going to be on several campuses. And that work has been closely supervised and coordinated between the school administration and the contractor themselves.
And for public health, I mean, are you still pretty much, your schedule will be at, on average, a week per school?
Thank you, Senator. That's how long it normally takes, 100% from beginning to end, all the entire school. But in speaking, right now, the way the law is written, current statute is we have to do it before the school starts. So we're going to do what we need to do to, if nothing happens, if there's no law that changes anything, we're riding with the current law, which means we're going to inspect everything and then the schools won't be able to open until they're inspected, right? Because that's our obligation to follow the law and pass. And so I don't know if that answers your question.
But you're still looking, and I'm just asking your timeline on average, it's still about a week on average. Again, I understand you might have to go back for reinspection if there are things that they can go back and immediately address. But on average, we're looking at, if we have
that's the
11
average.
remaining schools, we could be looking at 11 weeks or more from now is what we might anticipate for some schools.
Yeah, she can elaborate, Francine can elaborate.
Good early evening, Senator.
We're heading into dinner time.
Yes. It could be 11 weeks. And keep in mind is that one of the reasons why we work with GDOE requesting the inspection is really it's the best use of our resources. If you're ready, we're ready. We're going to come on campus and we're going to inspect. There has been some conversation that we've heard from the Attorney General, perhaps focusing on the critical violations or critical demerits, which we do have that type of structure set up in a different category. However, an average school campus is significantly bigger than a tiny restaurant. Mm-hmm. And so we'd still have to look at the entire school to see if those critical violations are even there. So even if we were to minimize what we're specifically looking for, we still have to go on site and look at everything. And I don't know if that, I don't think that would hasten the time per se in terms of turnaround time of an inspection. So in that respect, it could be 11 weeks. We can, since it is technically all hands on deck, as Senator Teitig had said, schools are our priority, and we could add on another team to inspect 2 schools, but is Department of Education ready, number 1, and number 2, is everyone ready for our other programs to suffer in terms of responsiveness to new businesses opening, to restaurants opening, to child facilities that we inspect quarterly, to temporary workforce housing barracks that need their inspection to be done by law before we can renew their permit. So those are a lot of items that are going to suffer. People who are waiting for their commodities to be inspected are going to be waiting a little bit longer. So there is a cost to our division in terms of adding another team, and seeing as how I lost 2 seasoned inspectors and I have 1 who's still fairly new, I'm basically running with not the full staff that I had last year. And hopefully it grows. We're bringing on new people, but this is actually where we're at right now.
Well, I appreciate your response to my questions and, your diligence and I understand this has been a long-standing issue and the resources are limited, but I think at the same time, we all want to make sure the children are in safe environments. If I can ask the Attorney General, I don't disagree with what you relayed. I mean, at this current situation, and I don't see how we can legislate the corrections that need to be made. I mean, those are physical, tangible corrections in the school that need to be executed. We did extend it for a year, but I mean, even I agree. I think the can can't, we just can't keep kicking that can down the road Otherwise, I don't think the pressure is going to come down on the powers that be here to execute what needs to be done.
Yes,
So if you
Senator.
can just elaborate on that, Mr. Attorney General.
Well, you know, the comment, there was a question earlier on, I think it was the Vice Speaker. Do I believe a receivership would fix this? A local receivership is the way I viewed that. If you bring the feds in here, they're going to clean house. They're going to come in, they're going to take the general fund like they did with the solid waste, and they're going to get the job done. Right now, you know, in our view in the AG's office, with all this politics going around, accusing us of not getting contracts out and things like that, you know, to a certain extent I've had it because there's a bunch of subterfuge. But if you want to clean this up, you really need a receivership, because all I'm hearing right now is a bunch of excuses from every government official saying why they can and cannot do things. We were in a lawsuit a year ago when the school was beginning. There was a chart that was given to the judge on getting all the schools in order within 6 to 8 months. We're back in the same place again. Nothing has happened from that chart that we saw in that litigation with Judge Iriarte. You know, the government of Guam is dysfunctional right now because there's a lack of commitment to get the job done. You know, all we're hearing is excuses. Where's the DOE council saying you need to waive the procurement law if you need this to be done within a certain amount of time? You know, Senator, and look at GPA. We're always on this rush to waive everything because we don't follow through with what's required in order to get the job done. The Catholic schools, my team was just saying, the Catholic schools are always on time to start the school in a safe facility. And just because they don't have as many as the DOE system, what is it that they're doing right and our government is doing wrong? Private schools, and not just the Catholic schools, we're talking about all the private schools. They're there to make money and to provide the service. The problem in our government right now is that they're not there to make money. They're there to, look at all the excuses you've just heard. I can't hire an electrician. I can't hire I can't. That's all I'm hearing here. In the AG's office, we get things done or you lose your job. In the government, there's a problem that is endemic to what I'm hearing here. It's bureaucracy. There's always an excuse to justify, and who's going to hurt? Let's just waive the requirement for a safe environment for the kids. That's shocking. You say that in court, and a jury will rule against you. A judge should lose her mind to hear that. You cannot come from a position to endanger the children, the teachers, the staff. That's the problem. We're all being rushed to this point that we can't provide a safe school, so let's just ignore it. Put your head in the sand. That's what I'm hearing at this table. I didn't even want to come here today because I knew exactly what I'd have to say. The same thing we said when we were in Judge Iriarte's and provided the consent decree. Go into the general fund, take the money, Judge, you take control of the procurements and push aside DOE to get it done. The bureaucracy has gotten so large right now that they're dysfunctional. They can't provide. You tell me how they're going to provide these services by next week, 2 weeks from now. They can't do it. It's impossible. It's just literally impossible because of all the bureaucracy. So, you know, Senator, if you want a receivership, senators can pass a resolution, like I've said before, to the Department of Education. This is a U.S. territory. The government of Guam cannot provide an adequate education per the Organic Act. Please come in and take control of DOE. That is what the only solution is. Because they will take the money, like they did with the solid waste, bring in those Packer trucks, bring in a crew of a for-profit type of individuals. You get the job done, you pick up that trash, you put it in that landfill, and that's why we've got a functional waste disposal system today, because the feds came in and cleaned house. DOE needs cleaning house. The whole government and anyone associated with the DOE process, from the sanitary permits to the DODEA. Decades ago, that's why we got, the feds took away their own, they didn't want to have their military dependents in our school system. They saw it decades ago. But we've gotten to the point now that you had the former AG after me, Alicia Limtiaco, she shut the schools down. That's exactly the right thing to do. What do you do today? Shut the schools down. There's no quibbling about safety. You need to have a safe school. They're not providing it. We're not providing it as a community. There's no way to get around it.
Well, I appreciate your input. I mean, for us, it was shocking to find out, I know with our education chair, that these permits were being issued by public health without inspection. That was a shock. That's the only thing that's really changed, is
Right.
our awareness that this has been happening. The conditions, I'm sure, have existed for years.
That's why we all know Guam is a harsh climate on everything. Buildings, you leave a building alone for 6 months, it's got jungle, it's got tongue growing out of the concrete. You not inspect these schools for more than 10 years from what my team was telling me, you've got schools that have serious problems, and that's why the superintendent couldn't get it done within the beginning and now the end of that last school year. Now we're starting another school year. He had a plan, and it showed a focused fix on all these schools. It didn't happen. You've had, since I left office, Alicia Limtiaco shut those schools down, it got worse because then public health wasn't actually inspecting the schools. They were just signing off on permits. And I think I was told 10 years. It was more than 10 years that they were doing that. Well, what happens to the facility? It starts falling apart, concrete starts falling apart, everything starts falling apart because nobody's actually doing the inspection per code. And then let alone you have the problem with old schools. So, Senators, this is a bureaucratic nightmare that's going on right now. There's no way they're going to get the schools to a safe condition. With what I'm hearing at this table right now, it isn't going to happen.
Well, I certainly appreciate your input. My last question for this round certainly is going to be to teacher, principal, senator, speaker, Dr. Judy Wampat, representing the administration. You had mentioned that, you know, the administration is prepared to provide this assistance to the schools under these circumstances. You're waiting to hear from them what specifically do they need and what resources can they bring to the table to facilitate. If you can just elaborate, what is the administration prepared to do? Because there has been criticism towards the administration that they really have not extended as much support to the educational school system at this time that's needed, under what I think my colleagues will go on and elaborate and say really is a crisis situation. I mean, definitely not having these children in school in the next week or two for a parent and for that child is going to be a crisis situation.
Thank you, Senator. Like I stated earlier, of course, and this has happened in the past, even when I was in the school system, where we partnered with certain government agencies who will come into the schools and help. But in those cases, however, they were primarily simple type of cleaning up the school, water blasting, cutting the shrubs around the schools, painting the classrooms, things of that nature. And the reason why I say that is because, and I'm going to backtrack, and it's something that has to be considered by the department and the legislature. Because normally, under normal circumstances where we had our own custodians in the school, and I'll give an example. When I was a principal at Benventimedo, as soon as the children and teachers leave my campus, immediately the entire staff will go in, take out all the furniture, strip the floor, wax the floor, bring everything and clean the place from top to bottom and paint. That's not the case anymore. So even with the contract that you have, that the department has, is just primarily to go in, take the trash out. They don't sweep and mop on a daily basis like the way normally it would have been done with our own custodians. So it wasn't as bad then, where normally we're really able to get the schools ready to open the schools. That's not the case now, you're right, because the schools have been neglected for many years, and if that is the case where, 10 years or 20 years or what have you, where we've not done major type of upgrades to our schools, then that's why the department is in this situation that they're in. And it's not, of course, this leadership, to be blamed for this, because I know this has been happening for many years. So yes, the governor is willing to help. But we can't help until we know that, one, they must purchase the materials. We must know exactly what it is that needs to be done. And if it's not in the volunteers to go in and paint, move furniture, or clean, for that matter, inside and out in the yard, and it requires specific skills, then we would need to reach out to other departments and agencies where we know that they have some of those skilled workers. I've also reached out to Dr. Bert Johnston, about this whole situation. And he said that, we need to be a little bit more creative about, finding some of these individuals to help. DOE has right now 80 students that have gone through his program, and it's a basic construction core program. And these kids want to help, and maybe the department can provide internship or service learning credits, because these are all high school kids who want to help and can help, and they have the basic skills that maybe the DOE would need to be able to go into the schools and help out. So I'm trying to think of various ways to reach, other people to help the department, but I can't do anything or the government can't do anything until we know specifically what are we talking about.
And that dialogue hasn't happened at this point? I mean, we've known this timeline was coming. We knew the school year was going to open. You're telling me that dialogue hasn't happened between your office and the Department of Education to provide that information?
No, actually, I've been communicating with them. It's almost like on a daily basis. But the problem now that we need is to be able, other than the 4 contracts to upgrade for the 4 districts, to upgrade our schools with doors, windows, doorknobs, electrical upgrades, things of that nature. But my question was from last week is that if you have this dollar amount, 20 million, between 20 to 30 million, then why is it that they haven't moved to procure all those big ticket items? So I looked at the list also, and it's very hard for me to go out and ask any business company if they can provide 110, let's say, cases of ceiling tiles or floor tiles. The amount was just too enormous that any one business would not be able to, donate to help the schools. So those are big ticket items that I've suggested that they procure those, and then, let us know what needs to be done so we can help by finding individuals, within the department, within the community, and even parents. I've spoken to several PTOs, and they're willing to come in. They've gone in already to clean, to cut, to paint, but within their own PTOs, there are parents who have some of those skills that are also, willing to come in to help the school.
But they've not provided you, or have you come up with a list with them of things that are within reach where you could provide assistance on schools that have yet to be inspected to facilitate those things that are within reach?
Well, yes. So today, last week I got the big ticket items, like I was explaining earlier. Today I got the smaller items, some like buckets and mops and things of that nature. So that's something else now then that, we might be able to work with PTOs and others who are going to be coming in. So the suggestion is have someone at the school contact the department or agency that had adopted the school and work with them in terms of what it is that needs to be done, not the big or even big items if they do have anyone, and then the third will be the smaller things that they can bring in, some of their own supplies to the school. If you need to bring in your machete, your bush cutter, or your mop and broom, things of that nature.
And I'm sure you're going to help oversee that process to make sure that it gets executed.
Well, I would definitely be communicating with every department and agency in the schools.
Has there been any thought to ask the National Guard to assist in areas where they can?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I did bring that up as well, the possibility of doing that, because the only one technically I can request for that would be, the governor. I've suggested the CBs because they're construction workers. We are missing an opportunity right now. There is a ship on island with 5,000, sailors, and yes, we heard some of them have actually gone out to other schools. So, we don't want to lose this opportunity. They'll be gone in a couple of days, but there are other military personnel on island that I'm sure that the governor will be able to reach the admiral. Their process is a little bit different. When you request for assistance, you got at least from past experience that I've had with that, is that they have their own process in terms of, going up, following the protocol to get permission, and they want to know everything. How many people do you need? Do you have the materials? What kind of work are we going to do? What time between this time and that time? What days? All that kind. It's a lot more work on that side than it would be probably for the government.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the panel responding to my questions. I know I'm running out of time, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity to ask these questions.
Senator Brown. Senator Lujan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, panel. Good evening. General Moylan, again, you'd like you to reiterate what you had previously said and been saying all afternoon, pretty much, that this bill, basically passed as is, will not absolve the Department of Education or even the government of Guam from any liability of a lawsuit that may be brought against them should a child or anyone at the school be injured by either structural or whatever hazard that arises.
That's correct.
Okay. Superintendent Swanson, we were in session this last week. You came in here in support of the bill. You needed this bill to open the schools. You also said that should the Department of Public Health and Social Services not give a school a passing grade, or again, that you will still not open the schools because you do not want to take on that liability. Did you not say that?
Yes, I did.
Okay. That being said, you're hearing the Chief Legal Officer for the Government of Guam saying that this bill will not absolve you or the school or the Government of Guam from liability. Do you still support this bill?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
My question is, you've heard the Chief Legal Officer for the Government of Guam
Yes.
say that this bill will not absolve the Government of Guam, will not absolve the Department of Education, will not absolve any individuals, head of agencies, of any liability should anything happen to any students or faculty or anyone in the schools if a waiver is given. Are you still in support of the bill, knowing that it won't absolve you or the school of liability?
All I can say is there's always a risk of liability.
I'm asking, yes, there always
But-
is. I'm asking, my question is, yes or no? Do you support this bill knowing that the Attorney General says will not absolve you or the Department of Education or Government of Guam of any liability that may occur? Do you still support this bill? Yes or no? Simple. We want to cut through the chase.
No, because I wanted to get,
I mean, because we're sitting here, we're debating, and so yes, there's always a liability, of course. But do you still support this bill after you heard the Chief Legal Officer of the Government of Guam, regardless of how you feel about the office or the individual? I'm asking you. He's speaking as the Chief Legal Officer for the Government of Guam. He's saying that it doesn't absolve any government official or the school or the government of any liability. Do you support this bill? No, this is what he said. Yes or no? It's very simple.
exclusive of the conditional use clause.
No, he said it doesn't absolve you. Doesn't absolve the conditional use because
said it-
going in over the years of neglect, it doesn't absolve you. He just said that. Mr. Attorney General, with variances, does it absolve the government of Guam of any liability?
The way the bill is worded, it says that they can still be passed even though there's a dangerous situation. That will not absolve the liability of the government official. Now, if you wanted to put an immunity clause in this, you could try, but the Civil Rights Act, the federal courts would just get right around that, and they would be sued under the civil rights provisions. So, yeah, that's correct. What you're saying is correct. It does not absolve, nor will it fully absolve anyone of the federal statutory liability, civil rights liability, whatever the local legislature would do in that regard.
So even if we put in an immunity clause in there, you said there would still be a liability?
I believe there's still a federal court exposure, federal statutory liability. Correct.
Okay. Because of the years of knowing that the school condition didn't just happen, we knew it some before, we let it go, and we're acting now and trying to absolve or trying to give them the leeway to be able to.
Right. And you know, Senator Lujan, just to be very candid with you, that's just civil liability. You've got criminal liability. If you know that school is dangerous and you let a student go in there and they get hurt, killed, or maimed because of that condition, you know, companies, corporations get sued for, you know, building cars that are dangerous. That whole Ford thing with the gas tank exploding. You know, it's the idea that there's a reasonableness in the law that you can't just bury your head in the sand again. You know, that whole analogy. If the school's dangerous and we've got enough of the record to show that these schools are probably dangerous, you know, you've got public health out there that when they do inspect them, they've got all these problems that they're seeing with it. There's only so much protection that you can give as a legislative body to a government official that you cannot give otherwise. You know, and that's why I'm saying there could be potential criminal liability. If you know a school is dangerous and you let those kids go in there and somebody dies, it rises to the level of criminal recklessness. So anyways, Senator, this is not going to help, this bill.
Thank you. You also said that we are in a state of emergency. Do you say that, okay, holistically, because last year, actually, I called for a state of emergency on March 7th of 2023. I called for a state of emergency. At that time, it was said that I don't know what a state of emergency would do because it was a procurement issue. And it was the legislature's duties to be able to come forth with the plan for an emergency situation. Would you state that we are in a state of emergency?
That I think that nobody should be able to debate about. We're in a state of emergency.
Superintendent Swanson, are we in a state of emergency?
I believe so, yes.
Yes or no? Absolutely. Do you believe it?
Yes.
Or are we? Do you only believe it, or do you know we're in a state of emergency?
Yes, we are.
State of emergency. Board members, are we in a state of emergency? Yes. We need to proclaim a state of emergency. What are we doing sitting here? We need to proclaim a state of emergency and get everybody together and get all the resources that is needed to be able. We're not solving anything. The Attorney General had just said this bill alone does not solve it, does not absolve the government of Guam, does not absolve you, Mr. Superintendent, does not absolve anybody here of liability should this bill pass. If we are in a state of emergency, I suggest we recess. We call the governor's office. All of us sit in this room and see what resources we have to be able to get the schools open. And then, you know, based on the Attorney General's recommendations and whatever it is that we need to put in statute to be able to, again, limit the liability on what we need to put on statute to get the schools open. Otherwise, again, you know, knowing that you just heard what he said again. I mean, would you still support this bill on what the Attorney General had mentioned?
No.
Thank you. You know, have you put in your website all the inspections of schools that happen? I mean, that were
Yes, we have.
Okay, all the schools were, okay.
All the ones we've received back, the ones that are just cleared this week are
Yeah.
not there
They're on the
yet.
website. Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, the superintendent doesn't support this bill. What are we debating? Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Lujan. Speaker Terlahi, you're recognized.
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if there's going to recess, but there was a letter received by my office, and I put it onto the messages and communications for all the senators, and I just wanted to make sure that they're all aware that that's there. It's a letter from the superintendent, from May Rose Nauta, giving a copy of a letter from the superintendent to Teresa Arreola, Director of Public Health, and attached to this letter looks like a schedule for DPHS inspections and an entire stack of, it's a request for exception with an entire stack of variance requests. I'm not sure if all the senators know that that is there.
Madam Speaker. Colleagues, let's take a short recess. Colleagues, I'd like to thank you for your participation today, and also thank the panel for their attendance. By tomorrow morning, when we return into a committee of the whole, we'll make available the communication from the superintendent to the director of public health. And this communication is the request for exception and variances, and it's a very voluminous document. The Department of Education has actually submitted 617 pages of variance requests. So I'm hoping we'll get that into the drive, I hope tonight, and if not tonight, then by tomorrow morning for you to review before we return to emergency session at 10:30 a.m. tomorrow. So we're going to recess. Senator Brown?
I want to ask a question, Mr. Chairman. Is there an expectation that we're somehow legislatively going to waive these variances, or why is that being provided? Why is that information being
just for your
provided to
review.
us?
If
Just
you
for
want to
reference.
review what the Department of Education is asking for a variance on,
But asking it to whom?
to the Department of Public Health and Social Services.
Okay, so that's something public
Just
health would
if
have
you
to
want to
address.
review it, it'll be in the
No,
drive.
I appreciate it. I appreciate the clarification. Thank you.
Just Mossy, Senator Brown. So, Vice Speaker?
On a point of inquiry, Mr. Chair, just trying to better understand all of this and the statements and the increase coming from the previous speaker from Tamuning, asking about the intent and the support of this measure. So is the intent to come in and ask for an emergency from this body? to the executive branch, I think it is a point of inquiry because I'm trying to better understand where we need to go here. When the statement was set by the leadership of the Department of Education that there is no support for this measure as is presented based on the information coming from the chief legal officer. So I'm trying to see where we're going from here.
Well, we're going to recess until 10:30 tomorrow morning.